Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video, I'm going to be demonstrating how to crochet the Luxe Loops Slippers, which is a free pattern you'll find on mooglyblog.com. This pattern includes two sizes. The smallest fits a women's shoe size 6 to 8, and the largest fits a women's shoe size 9 to 11. Shown here is the larger size. This pattern is, however, easily adaptable, so if you need a little bit shorter or a little bit wider, you can definitely make that with this pattern. To make the Luxe Loop Slippers, you will need a USL 8mm hook, Bernat blanket or Bernat blanket Ogo, and Bernat Sheepy. You can see here the cuffs have that great Sherpa texture, and that comes from the Sheepy yarn, while the rest of the slipper is made with Bernat blanket. First, let's take a quick look at the finished slippers. These slippers are made from the toe up, so we start here with color A, then the heel is color B, worked back and forth in rows, and then we add rounds of color C, which is the Bernat Sheepy. You can see we add several rounds of this, and then I like to cuff it over to make a really nice warm cuff, but if you like to wear it up, you can too. The other big feature, in addition to the cuffs and the bit of color blocking here, are these loops you can see along the side. So this one would be the right slipper, and this one would be the left slipper. So as you wear them, those little loops will be right along the outside of the foot. One additional supply that I recommend you have on hand is a pair of stitch markers for marking the first and last stitch of every round. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to be making the right foot in the smaller size. The only difference between the smaller size and the larger size is the number of stitches we start off with and the full number of rows we work. Otherwise, the stitches are the same. The only difference between the left and the right foot are the order we work the rows in to put those loops on one side of the foot or the other. So really, by making one slipper, you've made the other one. You just need to follow the directions to see what order to work those rows. And they both start out the same. So let's start with round one. We're going to start with our first color, and we're going to make a magic circle. So I'm going to take the end of the yarn and go over my finger twice towards me. Then I insert my hook under both of those loops, grab the loop that's furthest back and pull it just under the first loop. Then I'll do a little chain just to lock the loop there together. Then I'm going to begin the rest of the instructions for round one with a chain 1. And then I want to work 10 half double crochets into that circle for the smaller size. If I were making the larger size, I would work 12. So I simply yarn over and go into that circle, and I want to make sure that I go under that loop and under that tail end for each stitch. And then I can yarn over, bring that loop up in 3, up and through, and finish my half double crochet. There we are. Now with that stitch in there, you can see our loop is nicely locked together. I can go ahead and put a stitch marker in the top of that first stitch, and then continue crocheting into the ring. But for each of the rest of these stitches, I want to make sure that I go into that ring and around that tail end. So at the end of round one, depending on the size you're making, you should have either 10 or 12 half double crochets. Again, I'm making the smaller size, so I'm going for 10. So I'll see you at the end of round one. So I'm almost finished here with round one. I'm making the smaller size, so I've made 10 half double crochets. I've marked my first stitch and my last stitch of the round, and now I'm ready to join with a slip stitch right into that first stitch. Now, this pattern is worked in turned rounds. So normally when we're working in the round, we would keep working from the right side. But for this pattern, after we make that slip stitch, we want to go ahead and turn and work back the other direction. So that's where those stitch markers are going to come in particularly handy. So now we're ready for round two. Round two again begins with a chain 1 that does not count as a stitch. Then we're going to half double crochet in the first stitch. So we yarn over, find that stitch with the first stitch marker, put our half double crochet right there and move that stitch marker on up as this is now our first stitch of the round. Then we work 2 half double crochets in the next stitch. 1 and 2. Then we begin the repeat that takes us the rest of the way around the circle. We work 1 half double crochet in the next stitch, 2 half double crochets in the stitch after that. 1, 2, 1, 2, all the way around that last stitch. So at the end, depending on what size you're making, you should have either 15 or 18 half double crochets. So I'll see you when we get to the end of round 2. So here we are at the end of round 2. I've got a stitch marker in the first and last stitch of the round, and I've joined with a slip knot. So now we're ready to begin round 3, which means I need to turn first and then start again with our chain 1. So to begin round 3, we're going to start with a half double crochet in the first 6 or 8 stitches, depending on the size you're making. Again, I'm making the smaller size, so I'm just going to half double crochet in those first 6 stitches. So there's our first one, and I will go ahead and move that stitch marker on up. And then there's 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. There we are. Then we work 2 half double crochets in the next stitch. 1 and 2. Then we half double crochet in the next 7 or 8 stitches, again, depending on the size you're making. I'm making the smaller size, so I half double crochet in the next 7 stitches. So there's 2, 3, 4, 5. Oop, finish that one up there. 6 and 7. And that takes us to where there's just one last stitch left. So in that very last stitch for this round, we're going to go ahead and work 2 half double crochets again. So we've just got those 2 increases for this round. So at the end of round 3, you should have either 17 or 20 stitches, again, depending on the size you are making. As soon as I get that last stitch made, I want to go ahead and move that stitch marker right on up. And then, of course, I can join with a slip stitch. And that is what your slipper should look like after round 3. So for round 4, we again need to remember to turn to work from the inside of the slipper. Then we're going to start with our chain 1. And in this round, we're going to start making the chain loops that create that looped braid that we saw featured on the slippers earlier. So the first thing to do is half double crochet in the first 12 or 15 stitches, again, depending on size. I'm making the smaller size, so I half double crochet in the first 12. So there's one. I want to go ahead and move that stitch marker right on up here. And then I've got 11 more to do. So 1, 2, 3, oops. And there, that should be our 12th one from the beginning. Let's see here. Let's double check. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So after we've made those stitches, then it's time to chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we're not going to be working back into these chains, so you don't have to worry about making them particularly loose to be able to get your hook back in there. Just make them comfortably. Then we slip stitch in the last half double crochet made. So what does that mean? This is that last half double crochet that we just made before we chained 6. So we want to slip stitch in it, but I don't want to come from the top. That creates a lot of sort of, messiness in the stitch. So I want to make sure that I insert my hook here from the front and then just wrap that yarn right along the side of the stitch there. So then I can yarn over and pull that up and make my slip stitch right there. So now we've got, move my hook out of the way a little bit here. You can see we've got that half double crochet, chain 6, and then we slip stitched right into the top of that half double crochet. Just closes that chain 6 loop up really well right there. So I'll get that loop back on my hook, and then we simply half double crochet in each remaining stitch around. So the only difference, for instance, in this round, which is where the differences sort of start coming in for that left slipper, is that you would half double crochet in just a few stitches before you make that loop and then have a bunch of stitches at the end. Those are really the only major differences for between right and left, other than where you join the heel. And we'll be talking about that when we get to that point a little bit. So I'm just half double crocheting in each remaining stitch around. My little beginning end wants to come out at me here, so I'm just going to go ahead and tuck that in now. And we've gotten to our last stitch, so I know that is our final stitch. There we are. And of course, then I can join with a slip stitch, but we're going to have that little chain 6 loop hanging right out there. So since I've worked my half double crochet into that last stitch, I do want to go ahead and move that stitch marker right on up. And then of course we can join again with our slip stitch in the very first stitch of the round. And that is what your slipper should look like. It's a little crazy, but that's what it should look like after round 4. And now we're ready for round 5. So we turn again. Now we're going to be working from the outside of the slipper, and we make our chain 1. There we go. Then we're going to half double crochet in the first 5 stitches, and this is for both sizes. So we go into that first one, mark that stitch with our stitch marker here, right on up, and so we've got 1, and then 2, 3, 4, and 5. And you'll notice that 5th one should go into that first half double crochet you made in the previous row right after you made that chain 6 loop. So that chain 6 loop should be right there next. What we're going to do now is chain 6 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now from here on out, we don't have to do the slip stitch that we did at the bottom. Instead, we just want to fold that chain 6 loop here down out of your way and find that next half double crochet and make sure that we half double crochet in each remaining chain across, or excuse me, each remaining stitch, I should say. So however many stitches you had at the end of round 3 is your stitch count that you'll be maintaining until we get to that heel. So you want to make sure to count your half double crochets and make sure that you're not skipping one on either side of that chain 6 loop. It can be very easy to accidentally do that, but that is, otherwise that's about it. Like I said, that's really the only challenge for this round. You're just half double crocheting in the first 5 stitches, chain 6, and then half double crochet in each remaining stitch around, which as you can see, I have almost completed my way all the way around here. So I want to get into that last stitch there with my stitch marker. So we'll finish that one, move that stitch marker on up again, of course, into that stitch. And then we can slip stitch to that first stitch made. And now that should be, with a little bit of craziness there, you can see that hanging out there, but you can also check from the inside, make sure we worked into each of those half double crochet stitches. And that's what your slipper should look like after round 5. So now we're ready for round 6. We want to turn again. It's an even numbered row, so we're working from the inside of our slipper, or an even numbered round, I should say. So now we chain 1, and we're ready to begin round 6. Round 6, we're going to start again with half double crochets in the first 12 or 15 stitches, depending on size. So that should take us right up again to those chain 6 loop section. So we want to go into that first one and move up our stitch marker, and then just half double crochet basically in each stitch up till you get to that chain 6 loop. So we'll continue to half double crochet our way around here until we get to that point. Okay, so I think I've got my first 12 stitches here. Let's double check. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So as you can see, that brought me right up to that last stitch there before our chain 6. So now it's time to chain 6 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then half double crochet in each remaining stitch around. So there should be 5 of those. So that will just help you maintain your stitch count and make sure that you don't lose a stitch on either side of that chain 6. But we're just going to finish up here, crocheting into those last few stitches of the round, and then we will have finished round 6. So I go into that last one there with a stitch marker, move that stitch marker right on up into that stitch, join with a slip stitch in the top, and that is what your slipper should look like after round 6. So basically you can see we're now stacking those chain 6 loops right on top of each other. They're just hanging out here right now, nice and loose. We're not too worried about that. But from here for the rest of the slipper until we get almost up to the heel, we're just going to keep repeating those last 2 rounds, rounds 5 and 6. So whichever way you're working, make sure you turn your work at the end of every round, and then work up to that chain 6 loop, work another chain 6 loop, and work in each remaining stitch across. So depending on the size you're making, you'll continue on for a total of either 8 or 10 rounds. Then it's time to assemble our loops. So after you've made the number of rows required for your size, then it's time to assemble the loops on the right side of the slipper. So we're going to say for our little demonstration slipper here, since I'm making the smaller size, that I've already gotten through round 8. Then it's time to assemble those loops. So here's what we're going to do. We want to make sure that we're working from the right side of the slipper. I've got that beginning tail still hanging out there on the inside, so I know this is the right side of my slipper. And we want to start with the round 4 loop right here. So this is the one that we joined with a slip stitch right there. And what we want to do is simply turn it. Just simply twist that loop. You can do it either direction. Which direction you do it is up to you. You just want to be consistent as you do all the loops on both slippers. So however you like to remember it, twist your loop, then find the loop of the next row or round and pull it up and through. And that holds that loop in place. Then we twist that loop the same direction, find the next loop, and pull it up and through. And we just continue doing that until we have worked through all those loops, and there's just the one loop hanging out there from our last round. That would be, again, either round 8 or 10, the last round that we made, depending on size. So once you've got that last loop hanging out there, I like to go ahead and just put a stitch marker in it to help hold it just a little bit more securely. And then we are ready to begin round 9 or round 11, depending on size. So now we're ready to make the last round before we begin the heel. So we're going to turn, don't want to forget to do that, and chain 1. And then we're going to half double crochet in the first 5 stitches, which will take us, again, right up to that chain 6 loop there. So we want to go into the first one, of course, get our stitch marker moved on up into the top of our new first stitch here. There's 1, and then 2, 3, 4, and 5. Make sure you get that last one. It likes to hide a little bit there, sort of wants to hide into the loop. And now what we want to do is twist this loop so that it matches the others and half double crochet through this loop and the next stitch. So first things first, let's get this stitch marker out of the way. Then we want to twist that loop the same direction we've been twisting the others. Just sort of hold it there with our fingers. Yarn over, because we're doing a half double crochet. Put our hook right through that loop. Don't worry about it twisting anymore. The hook will hold it the direction it needs to be now. Then we find that very next stitch of the row. Insert our hook in there. Yarn over, pull through that stitch. Pull through that chain 6 loop, pull that all the way up, and then we can yarn over and finish our half double crochet. And now that last chain 6 loop is secured and your braid won't be coming out. So if you'd like, at this point, you can sort of adjust those loops a little bit. If you'd like them to look a little bit more even, if they've gotten a little uneven as they go, you can block them out a little bit with your fingers. After that, we simply half double crochet in each remaining stitch around. Then we can join and break our color A, and we'll be ready to join color B for the heel. Again, do make sure you use your stitch markers in this round to mark that first and last stitch, because they're going to be really important when it comes time to add the heel. So I just finished that round, joined, and finished it off. I've still got my first and last stitch marked out with my stitch markers, and I have my next color ready to go for the heel. So now it's time to join our heel, but I want to talk about the difference between the right and left foot at this point, because this is that one little difference right here that will make a difference in how the heels go on between the right and left that will make the loops land in the right place here. So for the right foot, what you want to do is you want to join the heel from the wrong side. So that means from the inside of the slipper, you want to join with your next color into the first marked stitch. So remember, if we were working around and around, this would be our first stitch. This is our last stitch. So we want to join to the first stitch, but from the inside of the slipper, from the wrong side. When you go to make the left slipper, then you want to join to the first stitch from the outside or the right side of the slipper, because on the left side, that braid is going to be over here. We just need to join in a different point, from a different side rather, to make that work. So again, for the right slipper, when it's time to join the heel, you join from the inside of the slipper, the wrong side, to that first marked stitch right there. When it's time to join the heel for the left slipper, you want to join from the outside or the right side of the slipper to this first marked stitch right there. So make sure you mark your stitches as you make that last round before you begin the heel, because that's going to let you know where to begin. So right now I'm demonstrating the right slipper, so I'm going to join from the wrong side or the inside of the slipper itself. I've got my color B ready to go, so I'm simply going to insert my hook in that first stitch right there. And now I can go ahead and get that stitch marker out of the way since I've got my hook in there. And I'll just yarn over and pull up a loop. Then I'll chain one and I'm ready to begin stitching my heel. So to begin the heel, we half double crochet in the next 12 or 15 stitches, again, depending on size. I'm making the smaller size, so I just do it in the first 12. So again, you can go ahead and mark your stitches. From here on out in the heel, we're going to be working in rows, not in rounds. We'll go back to rounds when we get to the cuff. So it's not as important to mark your stitches here for the heel, but if you'd like to, you absolutely still can mark those stitches. Especially if you're a beginner, they can really help you make sure that you don't, skip a stitch on the end or end up adding a stitch into the turning chain or something like that. So I'm just going to get my 12 stitches done here. Again, I am doing the smaller size. If I were doing the larger size, I would need to do 15. So that should take me most of the way around here to that chain loop section. So I think there's one more, but let's go back and count here. I'm going for 12. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I need one more. And 12. There we are. So that is the first row of the heel. Very simple. Join from the inside and crochet for the right foot there from the inside, 12 or 15 stitches. These remaining stitches here at the top of the foot will remain unworked until we go back to add that cuff. Now rows 2 through 6 or 7 of the heel, again, depending on size, are all the same. We just chain one, turn, or turn and chain one, and half double crochet in each of those stitches across. So this is our nice little color blocked heel, very simple. And this is also a great place to adjust the length a little bit if you need to. If you find that, for instance, like me, you've got a wider but shorter foot, you might want to have started with the larger size for stitch counts, but then only do the smaller size for length. Unfortunately, most of us have to go buy our ready-made shoes off the shelf. And of course, they're not custom made for our feet. But when we're making slippers, this is a great opportunity to, change it up a little bit. Like I say, make the wide size with the short length, or make the narrow size around with the longer length if you've got long and narrow feet like my mom does. Lots of opportunities here to customize these slippers as you go. Definitely try them on, and you can adjust that length a little bit and see and really get the right size slipper for you. But of course, I've included those standard sizes so that it's giftable as well. So as I say, for the rest of the heel, we're just chain one, half double crochet, back and forth in rows. The number of rows depends on the size you're making and indeed the length of your foot. After you get that last row done, whatever row it is for your size, we're going to want to cut that yarn, leaving a nice long tail, because we're going to use that yarn tail to sew up the back of our heel. So I recommend leaving a good 12 inches or so. Don't have to measure it out, just eyeball it. You just want to make sure that you have enough yarn left at the end to do your seaming. So as you can see, I simply pulled up on the hook and pulled that yarn end right out. I'm going to pretend that I've got the full length of my slipper here. So now it's time to seam up our heel. Now this is the right side of my slipper. I can tell because that's the side the braid's on. So when I go to seam my heel together, I don't want to seam it here because then the seam will be really obvious. I want to flip it and seam it with the right sides of the heel together. So you can see that's kind of an odd maneuver here. It's all kind of weirdly folded up, but I just want to make sure this is the outside of my slipper. I want to make sure those pieces come together here when it's time to seam up this heel. So what we want to do, go ahead and set that aside for a minute and get our yarn on our needle here. This is a Susan Bates finishing needle. I really love using these with jumbo and bigger yarns. And then we can simply fold those together. Now we don't have a lot of stitches here, so you don't have to, but if you want to, you can again use your stitch markers to sort of pair those up. Now for the larger size, for this last row, or the heel row, I should say, you're working an uneven number of stitches, an odd number, so you'll have one little unpaired stitch there at the end. I like to just sort of grab that one with my yarn needle before I weave in those ends, just to close it up as well. But the main thing is just going straight across and seaming up that heel. This is a simple whip stitch, nothing fancy. I just want to get through both of those stitches on both sides and close up the back of our heel here really nicely. And then of course I can just weave in this end like I normally would. These needles are a little bit sharper, so sometimes they want to catch a little bit, but they are just so easy to thread with these big jumbo yarns. There we are. So that would have been my last one. Like I say, for the larger size, there would have been one last stitch down there, so I would just catch it with my yarn needle before I go ahead and start weaving in this end, just like I normally would any other yarn end. So we know what that looks like, so we can tuck it inside now. There we are on our little demo here. Get all those, pretend we've actually woven them in. And that is what your heel should look like all sewn together. And then we're ready to add our cuff. Okay, so before we add that Bernat Sheepy cuff, the Sherpa look cuff, it's easier to add a little bit more edging with a Bernat blanket first. I went back to color A for mine, but you can use color B or whatever you'd like to use. I like to use something that's going to come close to matching the color of my Sherpa cuff so that it sort of blends in really well with that. But for this section, all we really want to do is you can go ahead and join to any part here at the opening, our little foot opening, wherever you can get under a couple of stitches here. And it can be a little bit tricky. Just want to take your time. And basically, we want to work evenly all the way around the opening. So how many stitches is, of course, going to depend on the size you're making. For the larger size, you would want to work 23 stitches evenly around the opening. For the larger size, 25. And very simply, on the full size, let me bring up the full size slipper where it makes a little bit more sense here. So it's a little easier to see. So for the full size slipper here, this is the larger size. So the way I divided it was, I knew that I had 7 stitches that I could work across the top here. There were 5 we didn't work into, and the ones right along the edge there. So that left 18, so I put 9 on each side of that color block heel. So I kind of started right here. I did 9 along the color blocking, 7 along the top of the slipper, and then another 9 right here. That gave me the 25 for the larger size. For the smaller size, you're going to have the same number up here, so you just don't have as many right here. So it would be starting here again, if you will, 7, 7 across there, and then 7 across there would get you to 21. So I guess it would actually be 8, excuse me. 8 across there, 7 across there, 8 across there. Sorry about that. Little bad math there on the fly. But the point is you can sort of think about where you want to put those stitches on that as edging and work it as evenly as you can. Just basically about 1 stitch for every row. Simply crochet right along there with your color so that you've got a nice round to work your Sherpa cuff into. So after you've worked a simple round of single crochet there around the opening, and you can adjust that stitch count a little bit if you'd like it a little looser or a little tighter. You can see that right here. Then it's time to go ahead and add our Bernat Sheepy cuff. So we're going to go ahead and add those right into these stitches. And it doesn't matter which stitch you start in, but you do want to go ahead and use your stitch markers so you can mark the first and last stitch of every round, because with these stitches, it's even easier to get a little bit lost. And that will just help you maintain your stitch count so that your cuff doesn't get smaller or bigger on you. Now here's a closer look at the Bernat Sheepy yarn. You can see here it's got a string inside, kind of like the Bernat blanket does, but we've got these great tufts of yarn all coming off one particular side, and it creates this really great texture. But it does make it a little bit more difficult to work with because we can't really see our stitches. So what we want to do is use our fingers to help us feel our way and to help us count our stitches every round. Even after decades of crocheting, I still counted my stitches after every round of this cuff to make sure that I had the right number. So what we want to do is we can join to any of these stitches at the opening. Doesn't matter at all, whichever one you want to, just go ahead and pick one. And we want to join with a double crochet. So I've got my tail end of my yarn held here in my hook hand with my non-hook fingers. Then I can yarn over twice and insert into any one of those stitches there along the opening. Yarn over again, pull up my loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, and pull through 2. Genuinely not the best yarn for demonstrating this. If you'd like to see this technique worked in a smoother and easier to see yarn, I absolutely have separate video tutorials for that here on the YouTube page. So you can check that out where it's a little bit easier to see. But I am going to go ahead and put my stitch marker right in the top. If that maneuver with this yarn is just too much, you can absolutely join with a slip stitch and chain 3 instead. Whatever works for you. I just like getting started with that stitch. Makes me a little extra happy. So then we just simply double crochet in each remaining stitch around. These last rounds here for the cuff really are quite simple. I kept them very simple on purpose because we've got this yarn that really does do all the work. You can see it immediately creates this really great, fuzzy, non-see-through, very thick, very plush texture right off the hook. And these are double crochets. Normally a big loosey-goosey stitch. You can see just how solid this is right here. So for this first round, it can be relatively easy to maintain your stitch count here. You just want to make sure that you work into each stitch around. But as you go and you have, further rounds and you're working into the sheepy yarn itself, it can be a lot more difficult to see where you're going. So let's go ahead and finish up my little mini round here, and then we'll talk about how to manage those further rounds of the cuff. Okay, so I've double crocheted all the way around and I've joined with a slip stitch. I'm not going to pull up big on this loop like I normally do. This stuff is a little bit harder to pull back and forth, so I just want to keep my loop real close. But I wanted to point out, like I said, I counted my stitches after every round of this cuff. So you can just use your fingers and really take advantage of the fact that these are double crochets. So you can pull each post apart, count 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way around, and that will help you maintain your stitch count. And then, of course, we need to work into those stitches for round 2 through, well, however long you'd like to make your cuff. I went for 8 rounds, but you can keep going if you've got the yarn and you like a longer cuff, or make it a little bit shorter if that's what appeals to you. But every round for the rest of the cuff are all going to be the same, and we're not going to have to turn anymore. When we were making the beginning of our slipper, the reason we worked back and forth in those turned rounds is that it helps keep the seam from slanting. It helped keep all these loops really nicely lined up straight without creating a slant for them within our slipper. With these cuffs, we don't have to worry about our seam slanting. Nobody's going to be able to see the seam anyway, and it's just a whole lot easier if we don't have to mess with that as well. So let's go ahead and make round 2 together, or at least get started on it here. We're going to start again with a chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to go ahead and count this one as my first double crochet. Now, if you've been watching my videos, you know I have other beginning double crochet alternatives, but with this yarn, I feel like the chain 3 is really about the best bet. Now, if possible, you want to try and mark that top chain, that third one that you made. It's going to be the top of your first double crochet there. And then you can do a couple different things. It helps to have really good lighting like I've got right here. It can help to have something light underneath your work, or alternatively something darker. You might find, especially with the lighter yarn, having a darker color underneath is a little more helpful. But the main thing is just really use your fingers and your knowledge of crochet stitches and their structure. This right here we know is the next stitch. I just chained 3, so this one's done. I can look at it and find the post of it right here and say, this is my stitch. And then I can use my fingers to feel. And if I just give it a little rub right there, I can feel right there where my hook's supposed to go. So it takes a little bit more time. You can't just glance at it as easily. You kind of have to use a few more of your senses. Just come on over, feel for that next hole. And then every once in a while, as I do that, I'll come over, feel for that next one. Then I'll stop and make sure. Are these lining up? Do I seem to be skipping one in here? Nope, I'm getting one in every stitch. I'm good to go. So it takes a little bit more time to work with this yarn, absolutely, but I think the finished effect is absolutely worth it. And when you top up your slippers and cuffs and hats and mittens and all kinds of things with this yarn, you get this really great effect. So as I say on mine, I kept going for a full 8 rounds so then I could fold it over. But you can stop whenever you want or keep going for a Sherpa cuff that goes for days. And that's how to crochet the Luxe Loops Slippers. Again, you'll find that free pattern on mooglyblog.com, along with both right and left-handed video tutorials and links to all the supplies you need. And don't forget, you can also make the Luxe Loops headband with that third section of your leftover Ogo. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.